Well, I was very impressed, really, with what Marcus is doing. And obviously, when you look at it, though, he's a 22-year-old young footballer. He shouldn't really be the one having to do this. But the fact that he is important. It's impressive. He's a very fine young man, and he's a credit to his sport and his family. And he's doing a great job in trying to get the government to U-turn on that decision to stop the vouchers going on during the summer. Obviously, these are, strange times. Kids wouldn't ordinarily be fed during the summer holidays. Understand that. But, you've got to look at it and go, these are very, very difficult times for a lot of people and a lot of families.
It was a very personal letter that he wrote, and he used the line, "The system isn't built for families like mine to succeed."
There are a lot of young people, young children in this country that are going hungry. And in a country like ours, a country of quite substantial wealth, that seems to be largely unacceptable. And the fact that he's stepped forward to take this on his plate is something that I think deserves to be applauded. And hopefully the powers that be will listen. It seems strange that we have to be in a position where we're desperately arguing to try and get young people fed and stop them being hungry.
But I guess the government has said it's sticking to what it normally does. It doesn't normally pay for meals in the holiday. There's a £63 million grant for local authorities to share it as they want, and they're worried about setting a precedent.
I can understand that, but this is a kind of unprecedented situation. Is a word we use all the time now, but it really is. So it's not really going to set a precedent, is it? Well, it's not because next summer holidays, but this is a time where families and people have not been able to go out on to work. A lot of them have lost their jobs. A lot of them are being furloughed, but so they're going through difficult times when they perhaps go through difficult times anyway. I'm not, particularly trying to batter the government on everything. I think they've done a lot of good for businesses, huge amounts of money, trying to save a very difficult situation, and it is a difficult situation. But for this, hungry kids, come on.
We had Raheem Sterling on Newsnight last week talk about racism. Marcus Rashford today, we're seeing talk out on hungry kids. We're seeing now how these young men are using their platforms for real change. Does that surprise you?
It takes courage to do what Rashford and Sterling have done, and numerous players. I think football has been great during this lockdown. Obviously, you get the odd isolated exception, but by and large, footballers have got together. They've gone towards good causes. They've put money into various projects. They've done lots of good work in the community. And I've been proud of the sport that I've been involved in all my life. And for young men, these are very young men, most of them sort of teenagers in their 20s, to come together for the power of good is important. And this, those speaking out against things, whether it be racism, whether it be feeding our children, etc., it takes bravery to do that, because whenever you put your head above the parapet, there'll be lots of people want to knock it off. I'm full of admiration for what they're trying to do.
You're very outspoken now. I wonder if you felt that you could have done this when you were their age, in that climate.
I'd like to think I'd have tried to make a difference, but those opportunities didn't really arise, obviously, when I was playing in the kind of mid to late 80s and early 90s. It was a different world back then. We didn't even have mobile phones. In fact, most of the football was in black and white as well. But nowadays, that's different. Not all players will step forward, and they don't have to either. Obviously, the government put pressure on footballers at the start of this, and they'd already got themselves together to do something important. And they've stepped up to the plate. So
you think this is a response to Matt Hancock, to the Health Secretary's sort of call to arms, telling footballers to, what did he say, have their pay cut and play their part?
Well, I think Matt Hancock was probably put on the spot a little bit, but didn't answer very wisely, because footballers are always an easy target. And it always worries me a little bit that the first people they want to have a go at anybody is always footballers, because they're young, working class men and they earn a lot of money. Are they above their station? That's perhaps they're thinking like that. But nobody ever says it about actors earning fortunes or musicians legends or people from other sports, indeed, or golfers or Formula One. So it's kind of this kind of different attitude always towards footballers. And I don't think footballers did it because of what Hancock said. In fact, I know they don't, because I was always already talking to one or two of them about what they were going to do and what they wanted to do for the communities, for the supporters of their football clubs, and for the NHS. And they raised a lot of money. So I think they've come out of this really well.
Last week, dozens of MPs wrote to the government about this free school meals policy, and they told us that they felt ignored. I wonder what you think it says about cut-through, or about the world we're in, that it's the 22-year-old footballer that may make a difference. If we do see the government change its policy, it will have been cut through from those areas.
Huge uptake on what he was doing today on social media. I've followed it quite avidly during the day. It will be quite the breakthrough if the government does do the U-turn that he's asked for. I hope they do. I don't think this should be a political issue. It just should be something that we need to sort out. It's a temporary thing over the summer holidays, and hopefully they'll see sense. I'm not sure they will, but I just hope they do.
Gary Lineker, thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, Sir Michael Wilshaw is the former head of Ofsted, and he joins us now. Sir Michael, we've heard from Gary Lineker and Marcus Rashford before him. Can you perhaps make the government's case for why they shouldn't be bending on this, why they don't need to?
Well, they should be bending on this one. I think Marcus Rashford was absolutely right to draw attention to this, and the government should pay heed to what he has said. I know lots of head teachers who are so worried about their children who are on free school meals, their poorest children who have lost out the most during this crisis. Those head teachers are going to be bringing those children in over the summer break. They're going to be inviting their staff into school over the summer break to teach them, to make sure that they don't lose out any more.
So at their own expense?
At their own expense. Now, if they're going to be doing that, and those children are going to be coming into school over the summer break to catch up, they need food and they need sustenance. And I think the government should listen to Marcus Rashford and listen to head teachers as well. It just sounds very mean-minded and heartless. And of course, who has lost out most over this period? It's been the poorest children. The latest survey from the Institute of Education, UCL, has said that roughly 2 million youngsters have received very little work over this period. And a lot of those youngsters will be on free school meals and will be from our most disadvantaged communities.
Perhaps the government is putting its priority as school provision during the summer for exactly those disadvantaged families you're talking about. I mean, would you say that is where it needs to direct resources?
It needs to direct resources to that, but we also need to recognise that these youngsters have really missed out a huge amount of their education, and schools need to really focus on the disadvantaged, on the poorest, to make sure that they do catch up. And this will be a support to them in doing that.
A lot of parents will be feeling that kids have missed out from right at sort of across the range. Do you understand why we are where we are with the school policy as a whole? Was it the unions pushing the government? Was it parents pushing the unions? Was it the government leading? Do you know who has directed this policy to where we are now? The
free school meals, the school meal policy generally. Well, I think there have been
opening policy.
There have been confusing messages. The Prime Minister said that all primary schools will be going back into primary school by the end of June, when it was patently obvious that wouldn't work. There wouldn't be enough classrooms, there wouldn't be enough teachers in the primary schools to accommodate them. And head teachers were saying that all along. Now, who was making that policy? Who was looking at the detail of that policy? Was it the number 10, or was it the Secretary of State for Education? The same with laptops. The number of head teachers said to me they've not had enough laptops to give to their poorest children to do online activities at home. And yet both the department and Number 10 were saying that they were giving laptops to every school and going to make sure that happened. So there needs to be absolute clarity between Number 10 and the Department of Education on the return to school. And I worry about what's going to happen in the future. I worry about the summer programs. I've mentioned that a lot of head teachers are going in voluntarily, inviting their staff to do the same. I worry about that because unless it's well organised, it'll go down badly. I speak as some
whom? For the
children, because the children will want to go back into the school they know. They'll want to go back into a school where they recognise the teachers and formed a relationship with the teachers. If that summer programme is away from the school environment, I don't know, in the town hall somewhere or somewhere else, children, particularly poor youngsters, won't go.
Now, this is happening in England. Obviously, in Scotland and Wales, it's different. They will carry on the school free school meal policy during the summer. But we heard from Scotland's Education Secretary that he thinks it could take a whole year to get things back on track. Do you believe that the most disadvantaged kids you're talking about here will catch up, or is that going to be a lag that stays?
I doubt it. I mean, they've lost 12 weeks. They'll lose even more because not all examination candidates in years 10 and 12, year 5 in primary schools, will be going back en bloc in September. So there'll be more time lost. And it'll need more than a summer school programme to make up the lost ground. I would imagine good schools will be saying to the staff, we want you to come in over the weekend, we want you to do twilight programmes, we want you to come in over half-term breaks as well. Now, the unions might cavil against that, but I think a lot of teachers who will want to do well by their children will do that voluntarily. And the government, if there is money, should be incentivising the school budgets to help head teachers pay them in those times.